Chapter 61. Colonel Stratton. Danny surprised himself. It had been a long time since he taught, and this was very different. But he was a good teacher. He looked at the faces of the young pilots, and he remembered what it had been like. Most of them were very young. It made him feel old at 23. He was treated with a certain hero worship. He was a survivor of the Battle of Britain and an ace pilot with 8 confirmed kills, as well as a war wound. He was kept completely grounded for the first 2 months. There was a marked improvement in his neck and shoulder, and he picked up some weight, losing the paleness around his mouth and the tightly drawn cheekbones. He called Johnny from his office one morning in June. "Hey, Patty, how are you?" Johnny was delighted. "Moose Wrangler, you're late with your congratulations." "I am oblivious. What am I congratulating you for?" "I am now a squadron leader." "Ah, Johnny, good for you. You deserve it." He scoffed. "I put in a transfer request and then Fred countered it with this. I thought about it a while, but he talked me into it. I'm good at it, I think." "You would be. I would have followed you anywhere. I sort of did. You're a good leader. But before you curse at me, Elle and I wanted to invite you over for the weekend if you can get leave." There was a short pause. "All right. Let me see what I can do. It might be tricky, but I'm in need of it. I'll let you know by Friday." On Friday, just as Johnny called to say he had managed to take leave and would be driving through late afternoon, there was a knock at Danny's door. He cut the conversation short. The door opened. It was one of his superiors, Wing Commander Andrew Perry, along with an older man in the uniform of an American Army Air Force colonel. "Danny, this is Colonel Stratton, USOF. He's here on the quiet to look at our training methods and to talk to some of our experienced pilots. I recommended he speak to you, since you are one of our best instructors with the active combat flying hours to back it up. Colonel Stratton, this is one of our Canadian pilots and an ace from the Battle of Britain, Danny O'Neill." Danny stood up, saluted. "Colonel, how can I help?" They shook hands. "Pleased to meet you, Sergeant. I'd like to spend some time eavesdropping your training this afternoon, and I'd like to ask some questions as they come along. We're working on strengthening the defenses in the Pacific, and I'm here unofficially to see what we can learn from you fellows who have been holding the Hun off." Danny nodded. "You're welcome." "Thank you, Sergeant. Wing Commander Perry, I'll just wingman O'Neill for the afternoon, and I'll come by your office when I'm done." Danny had a sinking feeling in his stomach. Stratton sat in the back of the room as Danny pointed out marked differences in the Spitfire and Hurricane, attack techniques, how the 109 was an energy-type fighter, and how to effectively approach it in battle. And he was conscious of Stratton's eyes and ears on him the whole time. At the end of the afternoon, Stratton came to him. "That was exceptionally well presented. I understand why Perry says you're one of their best. Tell me, Sergeant, he mentioned that you were restricted on flying hours due to an injury. Are you allowed flying time currently? I'd like to fly with you." "Yes, sir. I'll get clearance." "You do that." The de Havilland Tiger Moth was no Spitfire. Nevertheless, Danny had affection for it. But today there was no joy in watching the earth drop away. He was waiting for Stratton's voice. It was almost a relief when it came through the headset. "All right, Daniel, let's cut the bullshit." "Sir." "You're as Canadian as my ass. I know a Georgia boy when I hear one." He said nothing. What was he supposed to say? "Okay, we're not going to admit anything. Son, you know you're not supposed to be here. You broke the law, and there's one hell of a penalty to pay for that back in the States. So what are you going to do? Never go back?" "There's nothing there for me, sir. My wife is a British girl. I'll go where she's happy." "And you have no desire to make things right with your country?" "My country doesn't need me, sir. I am needed here." "What if I said your country desperately needs you and the experience you've gained here?" "I'd say I'm not welcome back, since my experience was gained against the law of my country." "There are ways you can make good on that." "What do you want from me, sir?" "We need experience, Sergeant. Especially in the Pacific. There are places where our defenses are thin, and we could do with an instructor of your caliber to help train the Filipinos." "I'll face 10 years in jail if I set my feet on American soil." "Daniel, I want you to listen very carefully. You are going to hear from me again, and I want you to understand that I can cause you a great deal of difficulty, even here. That, or I can pull strings for you, and you can come home a hero survivor of the Battle of Britain, to share your knowledge and skill to defend your country. There are 2 ways this thing can play out for you. You can choose which one you prefer." He was tempted to botch the landing from the quiet rage in him, but there was no point. He put the moth down quietly and walked away without acknowledgement. It wasn't over, he knew.